Indeed, you were right there, providing for me.
Well, good morning and praise the Lord. Welcome to Real Talk for Real Men on Awesome Radio. Amen. We are here to provide some good principles and facts and truths that help men get through life in a successful way. And I'm Dan Lawson. I'm the pastor of the United Gospel Outreach Church in Kinston, North Carolina. And I have with me
Elder Nat Farrow from Kingdom of Heaven Ministries in Greenville, North Carolina.
And we're so glad that you tuned in. We've got a lot of things that we want to touch on this beautiful day. We want to talk about Juneteenth a little bit that took place on yesterday. Celebrating Juneteenth again, and which is now a federal holiday. But before we do, we've got a NBA champion. NBA champion. Tell us a little bit about that, Elder.
Hey, it's the Boston Celtics from up in Beantown. And, hey, congratulations to them, They had the better team to me.
A lot of Celtic fans.
Yeah, I don't have, even though I'm a Knicks fan, I don't have any grudges. I think they did what they were supposed to do.
Okay.
And so that's I actually think they could have swept. I don't know. I think they kind of gave that game down in Dallas. I don't think they played their hardest. I don't think you try to do that, but I think they were confident enough to know they wanted to do it while they were home on their own court.
And they did it in good fashion. Now, you know that before they won that, them and the Lakers were tied with, I think, like 17.
Yeah, 17 apiece, yeah.
And so now Boston stepped, because Boston had led for a long time, and then the Lakers tied it up when LeBron won one for the Lakers, and now they are back up one again. But, the word on the street is that this was the most boring run for an NBA championship. That's what media is
but
saying.
But that's okay. Because you can't take it away. They're the ones.
I mean, it's legit. Legit. It's a real championship. But they talked about LeBron's championship too, because it was in the bubble. So I guess there's a lot of people out there that want to knock stuff. A championship is a championship.
The name of the game is to beat whoever's in front of you.
That's right.
And they beat everybody in front of them.
When you do that, that's what makes a champion.
Yeah, so I don't buy into that. I think that's just conversation from commentators. They got to say something.
Yeah, they got to say something. Just like when Frazier beat Ali, most folks say Frazier didn't win that fight. I think he won it.
Yeah.
But, that's just the way it is. But, we got a champion. And so let's see if they can. They're very young,
Well, next year, if the Knicks are healthy, they're going to have something to say about it.
The Knicks always get another chance. Right?
I think if they're healthy, they will have something to say about the East. That's just my 2 cents in that.
Are you going to get another piece? I mean,
no, we had about 5 players that were actually hurt. Five major players.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying? So they may get another piece, but I think they have the pieces now.
You think they have the pieces now?
They took Indiana to 7 games with the pieces they have, and that was like the second team.
Yeah,
that's just my,
It's kind of like the Lakers beat Boston with both LeBron and Anthony Davis out. Did you remember? Right. That's but I don't think that's going to happen 7 times in a series. I mean, 4 times in a series, but I wish the best for your Knicks, because
I think they have a good team.
Because there's a lot of New York Knicks fans. They're almost as bad as the Dallas Cowboy fans. They just don't quit. No, they ain't gonna accept defeat.
Well, it's a major market.
It is a major market. Actually, believe it or not, they're the biggest when it comes to money and resources for them.
I think a lot of people say that the people that run the organization is part of the problem now.
They were. I think they're getting better. I think this last couple of years they've built, and they actually
Well, they never
put
did.
something together.
It's still the same owner, though, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah, because they were saying that a lot of people. Were
I
saying
think he kind of backed
the
off a little
Knicks are
bit.
Not going to be good until he sells.
But when they brought Brunson in, I think, players have something to say too.
Yeah.
And so I think they have a chemistry now that's working.
Okay,
The other
good.
sports thing I wanted to touch on, we lost Willie Mays the other day.
Yeah.
And if anybody, baseball, he was one of the best.
Oh man.
He was one of the best at it, man, if not the best, because, I listen to a lot of folks talk about it. And if he hadn't took those 53 or 54 and went into the military, I think he'd have got Babe Ruth's record before Hank Aaron, because he finished with 660 home runs. And he was a home run hitter, a base stealer. He could run, and a Golden Glove center fielder. So,
Wow.
he did it all, So say, hey, Willie.
Yeah, I noticed that since his death, there've been a lot of talk about the old Negro League in baseball too. That's coming to.
They're actually having something in Birmingham this week, and they had prepared some things for him
when he was alive.
No, yeah,
No, that's what I'm saying.
and they were preparing some things that would highlight him because he's from Alabama,
Right.
and he died just before this happening. That's this weekend, so he started. I think he didn't even play a whole year, but he started with the Barons down there in Alabama. So yeah, it's yeah.
Well, let me go ahead and introduce our host who's joined us now, Pastor Tremaine Forbes.
From Kingdom of Heaven Ministries. And listen, I'm talking about Willie Mays. They talked about how good a man he was.
Mm-hmm.
They said that he literally would go outside and play stickball with the kids when he was in New York, would play 2 to 3 hours worth of stickball just playing with the children and giving back. And said whenever he came out, he would go get and buy ice cream for every child he saw on the block, and did a lot of things that really boosted courage, and also encouraging them to get a good education.
I'd have bought the ice cream. I don't know if I'd have played the stickball.
Yeah.
Oh,
For hours.
stickball. Well, I lived in New York.
You don't know nothing about no
Stickball was the game, man.
Was it?
Yeah, the street. Yeah, that was
They
cool.
didn't have a whole lot else to do.
Well, but I'll tell you what. One thing I heard, and I think it makes sense too, considering the time and the era. At that particular time, black folks couldn't live anywhere else.
Right.
They lived in the neighborhood.
Right.
Even the stars and the people that because you couldn't go out
Yeah, that's a good thing.
in the thing and get you a house, so you lived in the neighborhood.
Right.
And so people got to know them. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
On
sir.
that level. So I think that was part of the deal. But yeah, and that was in his heart to reach out, and yeah, stickball was a big deal.
Well, I kind of feel like he was playing it for the kids, and the kids were playing it for the ice cream. They probably should have cut through the chase and went straight to the ice cream. I'm just kidding.
You having a good day today, aren't you?
being from here, yeah, you don't realize how big stickball was. I used to play stickball in the street. That was what we did. You know what I'm saying? And
Where'd y'all find the sticks? We had plenty down here, but where'd y'all find them?
you just make a stick. You got it's like you could have a broomstick.
Yeah.
It's pretty much
so y'all
a
would
stick.
use a broomstick,
Well, I'm just
rough
saying.
mop stick or something like that.
Hey,
A long
times were
stick,
hard back
yeah.
in the day.
But it's
Because we could go out and cut us a stick out of it.
yeah. But it was
Right from behind the house.
it was part of the culture in the city with kids, and we did it in the street
Was it based on baseball rules?
based on baseball rules.
Now, what
You
we
had
used to
your-
do.
you had your bases you would run.
Now we used to play. you would get a popsicle stick and marbles, and a guy would shoot the marble across the base, and you would try to hit it with the
Oh, wow.
popsicle stick.
Yeah, we used to create
And
games.
then you would take the stick and go from first base to second base, third base, and if you can get back before the guy could put you out, that's what we did. But
Yeah, so there was a whole lot of little games we would create, with little Spalding balls and there was some that we would have a box on a wall. You find a wall, put a box, and you could pitch like and you had the stick and you would hit. You know what I'm saying? Same stick ball, but just off of a wall. So baseball was back then, and this was a good commentary. This is interesting because we're talking about really Black history in a sense.
Right.
Baseball was what we could play back then. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's where the Negro Leagues came out. Baseball was an American sport. But now it's just changed where other sports price baseball out. That's why you don't see as many black ball players. But that's what we could play back then. And we couldn't play with the white players, but we formed our own. That's where you got the Negro Leagues. And
I'm sure many of our listeners down south remember when, how when you were in a neighborhood and all the houses were in a block, but in that block, there's a field. If you go out your back door, anybody go out their back door, there's just this open space because the houses go all around the block. And everybody used to come out and we would play softball. Mamas, daddies, sisters, brothers, grown people, young people will all be playing softball. Sometimes you have 15 people on a team, but
and that was the game.
Neighborhood, yeah.
And if you look at it now, what has changed is the way sports is now. It's not just baseball. So we kind of gravitated away from that because of the marketing and all that stuff. But during that time, he came along in the 50s. Even the white folks was into baseball. Everybody was into it, and it was a big deal.
Yeah, when you talk to old black people, they know more about baseball. A lot of them know more about baseball than they do about basketball.
Yeah, so, and Willie was just one of the best, man. That was back when they would steal home. But anyway.
All right, well, Elder, you are in the pole position. We're going to talk about scripture and subject that you wanted to talk about.
Trouble.
Okay.
You want to mention something about Juneteenth first? Just a little.
Juneteenth.
Just a little something.
Talk.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. That was yesterday, and it's a federal holiday. This is not the first year that it's been a federal holiday, but I think it's good that generations are reminded of slavery, especially since you see this effort by so many politicians on the right to make Black history go away. I think the attitude is that we don't want our younger generations in the Caucasian race to feel guilty about what happened to Black people. So we don't want it in the history books. We don't want to teach it in the schools. And a lot of the red states are actually, they're being successful at getting rid of it. And to me, that's sad. Yeah. So I think it behooves us to make sure that we put forth the effort to make sure that there is sufficient information and publication of our Black history.
I think they've been doing that for a long time. They always keep trying to downplay what the Civil War was about. That's what the
but now they're getting it out of the schools and colleges.
Yeah, now they're being, but they've been doing that for a long time. That's what the statues was about.
Yeah.
And the Daughters of the Confederacy.
Yeah.
They wanted to water down what the Civil War was about. They don't want you to say, they talk about states' rights. Well, what was the states' rights? The right for states to own people.
Yeah.
So I mean, but yeah, and now they don't want to talk about that, but the fact that they made this a holiday, I think is a good thing to keep it up front. And
because now at least once a year you got to explain what is Juneteenth.
And I'll tell you one other thing before I'm gonna say, a lot of people don't understand when the troops went into Galveston.
Yeah.
it was a lot of black troops. They always say the truth, but they don't let you know. Black folks freed themselves. They were the ones going in saying, "Hey."
Well,
they were
part of the initiative to push that,
right,
because they knew, even though social media was a real small thing back then, they knew that they had people down there that still didn't know that they were free, and so they were part of the push to say we need to go down there and make sure they know, and also assist them, in moving forward into their freedoms.
And one of the biggest things was because you had those states that fought in the Confederate War, and you had a lot going on. I learned about. Let me go back to what we were talking about, even with Juneteenth. I did a boat at the estuarium. God bless you, Apostle Gardner. We did a little thing where we were taking people on boat rides, and I was the captain of a boat. And just the interesting part, I was getting a chance to see part of the Underground Railroad, how it took place, even in Little Washington, and I was amazed just to hear how sophisticated it was, and it was a blessing because even in Little Washington, they had where there was some people that came over from West Africa that never were enslaved, that they actually took and brought them over to do the rice, because a lot of some of us, we didn't have in our gene that people from West Africa have something where certain viruses don't affect them when they were doing rice, like malaria and all the little Zika, all that little stuff. And so they could just do the right stuff and it didn't affect them. They didn't get sick. And some of those actually came, they worked, and they went right back to Africa. And I didn't know that. I learned something about that. But then also during the process, I saw where on the boat routes I was taking people, there's a part of Little Washington was called Griffin's Beach. Most of those people were free. They owned that whole section. Quite naturally, you know how history go and how things happen, but they owned the whole section of that part and owned different little things. And I was hearing how, and it'll probably take too long, but I was learning about the Underground Railroad, and some other day we'll have a segment on that. But we're gonna go back to you, Elder, and you could kind of give us a little. Let's talk about trouble.
Folks don't want to hear about trouble. You know, they don't want to hear you preach about it. They want to hear you preach about everything. What's that song? Everything gonna be all right.
Sounds good. I might have you sing it for me a little bit.
But I don't know. When I read my Bible, I hear it talking about trouble. And I heard a fellow preach on this week, and it really caught my attention because one of the things he was preaching from was Mark 4, where Jesus told the disciples, we're going to the other side. After he finished teaching, he said, let's go to the other side. We're going to the other side. And when they got on the boat ran into a storm. And the way the brother developed it, it was like they were doing what Jesus said do. And his message was, don't let your fear trump your faith. Mm. Don't let your fear take the place of your faith. And, you know, they were on the boat going, and they ran into the storm. Jesus was on the boat, asleep, in the storm. But their fear got in the way of what they believed. And that's what, you know, that's how. And I just looked at that and I said, yeah, a lot of times that can happen. And when that happens, we forget. They forgot Jesus was on the boat and you know who he was, and they went down and they were scared. And a lot of times, you know, you hear a lot of folks preach that, you know, if you do this and you do that, everything's going to be okay. And if you follow this and no, if you live long enough, and one of the phrases that he came up with, I'm gonna let y'all take us out here.
Okay, we're Real Talk for Real Men. We're on Awesome Radio, and we're getting ready to get into a very important subject, fear of faith. We'll be right back with you.
You're listening to Awesome Radio, WECU 107.5 FM, 1570 AM. Christian media with the spirit of excellence.
Here's a minute to inspire fresh hope in your busy day.
Have you ever faced a mountain and thought, it's just too high? In many ways, conquering a mountain is like conquering a harmful habit or a destructive addiction. Both take planning, preparation, and perseverance. When I first hiked in the Colorado Rockies, I had to learn slipping and falling did not mean defeat. Each time you slip and fall in life, make the choice to struggle back to your feet. Those first steps are necessary for survival. Each forward step afterward becomes a tiny victory that echoes the resolve of Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
This Hope Minute was brought to you by Hope for the Heart. To learn more, go to hopeminute.org.
You're listening to Awesome Radio, WECU 107.5 FM, 1570 AM. Christian media with the spirit of excellence.
Surely in the family, God is with me. Surely in the family, God is with me. Surely in the family, God is with me.
Okay, we're right back with you. This is Real Talk for Real Men. We're on Awesome Radio, 107.5 FM, WECU, 1570 AM. You can also tune in online 24/7 on WBISAwesomeradio.org. You can go to that page and you can tune in live 24/7. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get right back into our discussion. We're talking about faith and how fear can get in the way of it. But the bottom line is trouble. So let's talk about that trouble.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say the phrase that really caught my attention. There's no such thing as a trouble-free life.
Trouble-free life.
It doesn't exist. You're going to have trouble. If you ain't had none yet, and I doubt, I'm sure if you're of a certain age, you've had some. But if you don't have none, hold on. It's coming.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody's going to agree with you. There are some people that have a theology that you can live trouble-free in life because of God, but I think that if they study the scripture, like you said earlier, they're going to soon learn that that's not what God has promised us. He's not promised us a trouble-free life. Now, you used the example of Jesus on the ship. Jesus said, let us go over to the other side. They run into a storm, and all of the disciples panicked now, and he got up and he rebuked them. Where's your faith? Oh, ye of little faith. I can understand rebuking them for their panicking, but I always try to put myself in that situation. And even knowing that Jesus is down low, but I'm still seeing the storm out here, I think I got to wake him up too, What do you do? So I think the big question is, what do you do with trouble?
Well, and what do you do with fear? I think that's a normal response. It's a human response.
Yeah.
That's why when things happen out of the ordinary, a lot of times that is the response. Just like the angel appearing. And the first thing he says, having the way that I know he says, fear not. But essentially what he's saying is, having begun to fear, stop.
Yeah.
Don't worry, it's okay.
In other words, the angel understands the fear.
Right, it's going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But
he can see it.
Calm down. Yeah. Okay.
You're starting to fear. Stop.
That's why I know a lot of people ain't seen all the stuff they say. You hear people talking about what they seen. They seen God, they seen Jesus, they seen angels, and you just have to ask yourself.
And they don't put the other part to it.
You really ain't.
And I think I would be the same way.
Yeah.
I'm with you on the fact that
I'm human.
if you put yourself in the place of the people, yeah, you would have been afraid too.
Yeah.
That's what, it's a natural response.
And here's what has to be dealt with, though. Let's say that I really try to discipline myself and try not to react with fear. Okay? That doesn't mean that the trouble is not still there. So there are some times that even if you're not afraid, you still have to deal with the trouble. One of the things that I've never had a problem with snakes. I've never been afraid of snakes. I don't know why, I can't explain why, but I've never been afraid of them. I'm afraid of not seeing them when they're there. But if I see a snake, I'm not going to be afraid. Because once I see him, he through. Even if I don't kill him, he ain't going to kill him. He ain't going to get to me. He can't outrun me. He's not as big as I am. I got weight. So I've never had a fear for snakes. But I've always respected it to the extent that, okay, I'm not afraid of you, but you got to be dealt with. You're here, and I got to deal with you.
And that's an interesting thing that you say because, having come out of the country, and I talked to my granddad and my uncles that used to hunt, and I remember me and one of my uncles was up in New York, and we went to the backyard of a building he had, but the neighbor didn't have a fence, and it was a great big Doberman. And I saw the Doberman, and we had to go up on the roof. And the first thought in my mind was that natural thought, okay, I got to do something. And he said, stop, don't run. And he taught me a lesson there, and he started talking to the dog. And when he would say, stop, get back, the dog would do it. He'd stop and get back. And he was, because animals will see the fear.
Yeah. Sense it.
And so when you don't show the fear, now they're kind of confused. Wait a minute, this dude ain't scared of me. And this was a big dog too. And so we dealt with that. And I think it comes down to, it's not so much having the fear, because we have the fear. Yeah. And it's even like a soldier. If you're in battle, you didn't tell me you in battle and don't have no fear. Yeah. But it's how you deal with it.
Yeah, and some fear is healthy.
Yeah.
Some of it's
That's
healthy.
true too.
Because that fear is what causes that adrenaline, that emotional fear is what caused that adrenaline to kick out, that gives you that extraordinary strength and agility, which is built into human beings and built into animals too. And it kicks that adrenaline in. You can run faster, jump higher, so.
Yeah, it's kind of like I guess it's the gazelle.
Yeah.
Here come the lion. It's time to go.
Yeah. So it's just like I heard this. I'm not going to name the church, but I heard this past weekend that some folks found a snake in the church. Well, they saw a snake in the church, and the snake got away, so they never caught it. So, and I'm not going to name the name of the church because a whole lot of folks would be avoiding it.
I can't wait to.
But I still don't know whether they ever found it or not. But okay, you control your fear, but you still got a situation. Mm-hmm. That's whenever I talk about that particular scripture, where the disciples were, and Jesus said, "Where is your faith?" and blah blah. It still has to be dealt with. Now Jesus stepped out there and dealt with the storm. So the question was he telling the disciples, you should have done exactly what you just saw me do? Or was he telling them, just don't be afraid?
I think it was a little bit of both. Showing them how to deal with it. And also, kind of giving them this hint, hey, no need to be afraid. And don't you understand that I'm here too? So I think it was a little bit of both on that.
Yeah, but
question.
Jesus, you here, but you asleep.
Which is a lesson in itself because he wasn't worried about the storm.
I'm gonna go to the school of Bill McKinley, and so what Elder would tell me is that he would say the pretext and the post-text determines the context. If you look at everything above in Mark chapter 4, Jesus gave them the parable of the sower. He gave them the parable. He was telling them this is how things are done. Then he goes on, talks about faith. And he talks about how seed is, how the enemy come in, try to steal the seed, all the good stuff. And then it looks like they are now in the test part of what they were taught. And so I think that's the part that where Jesus said, what's wrong with y'all? All that I just planted, you didn't use none of it. Why you don't have any faith? Why y'all you have little faith? He say.
So if they would have just laid down like Jesus, they would have been all right. Laid down and went to sleep.
No, I don't think that was the story. I think what you're saying is true too, because I think understanding who he was, because they had been with him already and seen some things.
I get that.
And
but
I
said,
think,
what should they have done other than get scared? Don't get scared. So what should you do? Get somewhere and sit down?
no, I think they did what they were supposed to do.
They called Jesus.
Yeah,
Which is what we would have done too, right?
Yeah, I went and hey, better go get Jesus.
So we got 22 seconds. You got another comment on that one?
Well, no, we'll save that for when we come back after the sponsorship break. You're listening to Awesome Radio, 107.5 WECU, 1570 AM. We will talk to you again after the sponsorship break.
You're listening to Awesome Radio, WECU, 107.5 FM, 1570 AM. Christian media with the spirit of excellence.
Kickback Jack's Greenville, 420 Red Banks Road. Open Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Kickback Jack's is the greatest sports bar in Greenville with over 40 high-def large-screen televisions to watch your favorite games with family and friends while enjoying our great food. Award-winning wings, juicy, savory burgers, mouth-watering pizzas, made from scratch appetizers, dinners, and desserts, paired with your favorite drink. Did you know Kickback Jack's has a private meeting space that seats 55 for fellowships like after Sunday church gatherings, retirement parties, wedding receptions, birthday parties, family and child-friendly karaoke, and more. Ask about the enclosed outdoor patio section that seats 30. Add that to the 55. Become a regular at Kickback Jack's Greenville, 420 Red Banks Road, 252-329-0400. That's 252-329-0400. Traveling? Well, visit our other regional locations in Durham, Raleigh, and 2 in Greensboro. Kickback Jack's Greenville, 420 Red Banks Road. Go Pirates!
What do you need to know about lunchtime at the public school if you're a student or a worker? Stay tuned.
That's Attorney David Gibbs Jr., and this is the Legal Alert.
We know teachers in the public schools aren't allowed to actively coerce students to become part of a particular denomination. But it's not true that schools are religious-free zones. Some people want to say that's what schools are, religious-free zones, but that's not true in the law. When public school students go to lunch, a limited open forum is created under the Equal Access Act. If religious groups want to meet during this time, just as other groups do, this is absolutely allowed. And students in the lunchroom are perfectly okay in talking about their faith one with another. The same thing applies to groups that meet before or after the same day. When we hear the phrase separation of church and state, it doesn't mean that students have to become religious-free at school. Students have great rights to witness in their local public school.
That's Attorney David Gibbs Jr. of the Christian Law Association. Visit our website for legal brochures, our e-alert newsletter, publication catalog, and more. Find us at christianlaw.org. That's christianlaw.org.
You're listening to Awesome Radio, WECU 107.5 FM, 1570 AM. Christian media with the spirit of excellence.
Surely in the family, God is with me. Surely in the family, God is with me. Surely in the family, God is with me.
Hey, good afternoon, good morning. You are listening to Real Talk for Real Men, and we are talking about trouble. Elder Nat.
Yeah, and it's funny. I love how Pastor Roberts, the guy that when they did Peace Be Still with James Cleveland, it was his church. They showed that on the Gospel Legends thing, how he developed that and what he was saying. These are guys that knew the sea. They said they thought they knew so much about the sea, but when they got in trouble, they called on Jesus. And I think that's how we are too. We can be experienced in something, but when something comes right, we call on Jesus. And so I think that's okay. It's how you respond to the fear. And you have to respond one way or the other. If you're in battle, you can turn and run or you can fight. It's fascinating. They just celebrated the World War II thing, the D-Day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Them guys were scared coming in and the fire was coming at them. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? But they had it in their mind, we got to go forward. And I think in a real sense, we've got to go forward. In the 23rd Psalm, what does it say? Though I go through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Mm. That's the key. That's the key. And that was the key with Joshua. Yeah.
So here's the thing, though. When it comes to trouble, I think this is one of the misconceptions that a lot of people have, So Jesus is in the fire with me, so I don't get burned. I don't even come out, smelling like smoke. Jesus is in the lion's den with me, so the lions can't bite me. The misconception is that sometimes he will allow the lions to bite. Sometimes he will allow the fire to burn. Faith is not just faith to get out of something. Sometimes faith is intended to help you get through something. So a lot of people think, we run around, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. How did they kill Jesus? Paul, Peter, they used weapons. These men had faith, but the faith of God does not always get you to avoid something.
Absolutely true.
You see?
And that's what the Hebrew boys said. Even if he doesn't.
That's right.
we don't still trust him.
And I believe they meant it, but we don't like that part. We don't like the part where he don't deliver. Yeah. We think, as a matter of fact, there's some people that teach if he don't deliver, then you must have been in sin.
But that was
a lot of people teach that.
But that was the argument of Job's friends.
Yeah.
Done something.
They
must have done. Job must have done something.
You did something, Job. I mean, God wouldn't do, and that was their problem.
Yeah.
That's what God dealt with them about. You're sitting here saying what God wouldn't do.
That's right.
When this whole thing happened, because God had a conversation and allowed it to happen. So they didn't know what they were talking about. I think they meant well. They were trying to figure it out too.
Yeah, and we I think the misconception. I think it's a big deal because a lot of times that's how we counsel people. Mm-hmm. We counsel people that way. They get into a situation. Don't worry, God's going to deliver you. God's going to get you out of this. No. How about if God allowed them to go through it?
Right.
That you need to let them know that, because if you tell them that God is going to get, this ain't going to happen and that ain't going to happen, God ain't going to let that happen, and then it happens, what have you really done for that person? People need to know the truth.
That's right.
And the truth is, if he allowed his son, to be pierced, and mocked and killed, we need to arm ourselves likewise and expect that on some occasions, he'll deliver us, but on some occasions, he will allow us to go through and endure it.
Two things.
That's not popular, is it? But
no, that's not. Many are the afflictions of the righteous. See, you don't hear that sermon a lot.
No, you don't.
Go ahead and say that second part.
But the Lord delivers them out of them all.
So that deliverance, what does that look like? It ain't the same every time.
It's not the same. And I always go back to this phrase in Andre Crouch's song, Through It All.
Yeah.
If I never had a problem, how would I know God could solve them? You see, it's a lot of problems are faith builders.
Yeah, yeah.
And you see God dealing with, you're in trouble and you see God bringing you through the trouble.
That's right.
And he doesn't, what was part of that song, part of that message I was talking about? The brother said, there was another time on the sea with Jesus, and he didn't stop the sea, but he dealt with them through it. He took them through it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm trying to think of where that was, but it doesn't always stop the storm. Sometimes he takes you through.
That's right. Yeah.
And so we got to look at this thing broadly.
Yeah.
Instead of, and most of those guys that do that thing that you're talking about, they preach that sermon that, everything gonna be all right.
Yeah.
Most of them guys are kind of what they call it nowadays. I hear a lot of it called grifting. Yeah, they're kind of making their own thing go.
Well, good preaching to them is not necessarily the truth. Good preaching to them is giving the people something that's going to excite them, because in their mind, people give better and attend more.
It ain't in their mind.
When they feel good.
That ain't in their mind. That ain't in their mind. People do.
Yeah, and I think the other storm that you were talking may have been, or this could have been a storm that would have fit that example. That was when the Apostle Paul was on a ship, and that ship was destroyed. Yeah. That didn't nobody do anything to hold that storm back. That storm destroyed the ship, but it's still a faith builder and also a developmental thing too, because it not only builds faith, but it develops something on the inside of a person when they go through something like that. Because
can I interject this part
right
too?
ahead.
That also is something that we can look at when it comes to the value of ministry, because Paul said, "Hey, look, don't nobody go nowhere.
Stay on the ship.
Stay on the grab your broken piece and hang in there." And they all made it because they all hung in there. And so sometimes our first thought is, I'm getting out of this. Other times God said, no, you stay in there and y'all get through it together.
Don't go out there and rebuke that tornado.
Yeah.
Stay in the house.
Stay. We're going to get through this. We're going to get here together. And then the other part, look at it this way. Don't leave your husband. Don't leave your wife. Y'all going to make it together.
Yeah.
I think the storm I was thinking about was the one where Peter walked, where Jesus came, and instead of him automatically stop, Peter said,
Lord,
and we think about that part, but we see how Jesus dealt with him in the midst of that.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna go through things, and I started this thing off with trouble. And we're gonna have trouble in and a lot of trouble we have to go through, and deal with it. I think some say that Job was the probably the first book that was written.
Yeah.
And So that's the first lesson we learn. You know, good things, you know, I mean, bad things sometimes happen
to good people.
To good people. I think that's
that's
somebody's line. But the point is that we got to understand that God is in it with us.
Yeah.
And when we understand that and know who He is, that's what's so important about reading
know who He
the
is.
Word.
That's the challenge right there, getting to know God. Because when you get to know God, then you don't get caught up in the hype. When you get to know God, you know that part of His plan is to take you out of this world. So if you don't go in the rapture, if you're not alive when the rapture takes place, then that means trouble is going to take you out. You know, whether that trouble be cancer, or whether that trouble be a car accident or a stray bullet, trouble is going to take you out of this world. That's part of the plan. So,
and we see that with the disciples.
Yeah.
We see that with, you know, Jesus was the first one that we see that.
Yeah.
You know, and then we act like it can't happen to us.
That's exactly right. And
that don't compute.
And we hype up sermons. We take sermons that are not based on good theology, good doctrine, and we hype people up so that they really think that that they can avoid any trouble, any obstacle. God ain't gonna let them go through that. God ain't gonna let them get sick. God ain't gonna let them be broke. And they don't understand doctrine. They don't understand scripture. They have not really gotten to know who God is.
John the Baptist got his head cut off.
Yeah. Good man.
And Jesus said, of all that were born of a woman, there was none like John.
None greater than John.
You know, so.
And can you imagine, you know, sitting there, you know, and if you're there and you know, Harold's got your head laid over the plate and the guy got the axe, but all you can remember is the sermon where your pastor told you, no weapon that's formed against me shall have prosper. God ain't gonna let this. God got a plan for you. God, you know, and you're sitting there, and then all of a sudden your head is rolling, and you're like, what? You know what I mean? But that's
we laughing, but it's just the truth.
A lot of people that's in church circles are in a daze today when it comes to understanding who God is, knowing the sovereignty and the divine providence of God. Everything that happens in our lives, He has divine providence over it, and He has plans for us to leave this world.
But we're living in this place of blessing, in this America, where I listen to people talk about Christian persecution, and we haven't seen persecution.
We don't even know what that looks like.
You know what I'm saying? I listen to this and I'm kind of like, where are you getting this from? You know what I'm saying? You're free to go out and do and say what you got to say. You know what I'm saying? You can go to other countries and you can't do it. You got to hide. They'll jump on you. I think a pastor was talking about somebody that got jumped, you know, beat them up because they were just preaching the gospel. And then with this fallacy we walk around here with, we need to let that go.
Yeah, and that's so true, Elder. I was just talking to someone this morning about how that person was being persecuted, and I think we don't really get. It was like, well, I believe they scam. Well, I feel like there's some kind of scam. I know this. Once somebody go through something, and they're being persecuted, it don't just happen this week and then it's over next week.
Yeah.
This person really got hurt real bad. The spouse got hurt real bad, and they have cited them for for desecrating the Quran or something against the Quran in their country, which is an Islamic country, and it's something serious. And you know, the spouse is reaching out to people, but anyway, that's a long story.
Whenever there's a discussion of separation of church and state, and people argue that it would be good if the state was in charge of the gospel, of religions.
No, sir.
I think that's where your persecution comes from. That's when you begin to get a source of persecution. The state of Louisiana is making it lawful that every government building
Every school,
and
every classroom, every classroom got to have.
those are government buildings.
Yeah.
So every government building.
Okay. Well, since you did that, everything in there ain't every government building isn't a school. And I know you said schools are government building, but it might be a room like in the tax auditor office. They might don't have a copy of the commandments. But they said every classroom.
Every classroom,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But see,
Private schools would be exempt, but every thing that's funded by the government has got to have a copy of the Ten Commandments, and it's got to be clear and readable, eligible. It's got to be they're even telling you what font. It's got to be in a sizable font. Now, what happens there? When you got unholy men
Get opportunity.
legislating what should be holy laws, that's when the persecution comes in.
but also, Jesus didn't do that.
He was a holy man.
Never did he say do that. He never. Rome
Give
was
Rome what
probably
belongs to Rome, and let us keep what belongs to us. You know?
Rome was probably more the stuff that was going on in Rome. You know what I'm saying? Probably more than what's going on here. Probably,
Way more.
And he never did that. That wasn't the way he was going. He wasn't building this. The kingdom was something that's different. That's where Constantine went off the rails, making it the state. The whole issue with the state and thing comes out of the guys that did the Constitution thing had just come from a place where the state had religion, and they were getting away from that. That's why they put it in the Constitution.
And so now when people revisit it, there's a popular place right here in North Carolina, and I know Uncle Dan know what I'm talking about, with Pastor Lawson know what I'm talking about. The people actually have this big, they are more of another race of this particular people who are professionals and got tons of money. And how about if they get a hold of them and say, now you got to have the Bhagavad Gita, or you got to have a copy of the Quran in the place. So we don't look at, we in charge now. But how about when a high concentration of another people get into a place and they say, oh no, we want to be able to, you're going to have to learn some Hindu around this, some, you know what I'm saying? You got to learn this stuff. That type of stuff, that's why we say separation of church and state. It ain't just church and state, is that you can't come and impose your other beliefs on other people who don't believe what you believe.
And when the settlers came over here, a lot of them were Christian, but they still wanted separation of church and state. They did not want to start a Christian state.
And a lot of them weren't Christians. And I think that's a little fallacy that goes on.
Oh, no, some of them were Christians and some of them weren't. Right. But I'm just saying, even the Christians that came over here did not want a Christian state. They were not interested in that
trying to have
because they were coming from one. They were coming where the Church of England was laying down all the laws and all the rules and killing anybody that disagreed. And they were coming out of that, and so they didn't want to see that in America.
And you had a king that cut his own wife's head off. You see what I'm saying? So it won't like this. This was no devout Christian. This was somebody that was under the guise of and got in power and said, "Oh, this is what we're gonna change this whole church. We ain't under the old church. We're gonna change the whole church, and this is how we're gonna go from here."
That's why.
Do you know the greatest persecution in history? The greatest persecution in terms of numbers?
Talking about the Crusades?
The Crusades. When the Catholic Church got in charge, when the Catholic Church was able to rule nations, they killed millions and millions of people, more than Hitler, more than the slaves that were killed. They killed millions of people, and it extended over a very long period of time.
And that's where Constantine started that with his whole thing and created that. And we haven't I don't know. I look at this is a whole nother, we can kind of delve into that another time. No, we don't have
we
time.
only got 56
But
seconds.
this takes us to a place where a lot of people are in it for different reasons.
Yeah.
A lot of people bring that stuff up. Some bring it up for power. You know what I'm saying? So you know.
Well, we having a hard enough time keeping holy men and women
My
in
God.
the church. So if the state take off, it's really going to get messy.
Yeah. And so we got to pray. Listen, pray, read your word, and seek the Lord so that you can be able to find out how to manage your trouble. Go to church. That's a good way. Your inheritance among those that are sanctified. You're listening to Real Talk for Real Men on Awesome Radio, 107.5 WECU, 1570 AM. We will talk to you next week. God bless you, and we love you.
Surely in heaven, God